Well, the actual revocation was in the suspension of London Met was actually in July. I think it was July the 15th. The revocation was at the end of August. There are obviously complex factors, some of which I know, some of which I can only surmise, about why London Met was actually targeted over and above any other university in the country by the University Board, UK Border Agency. But the initial involvement of the UK Border Agency goes back to around about Easter 2012. They initially visit, or appear to my knowledge to have visited London Met at the point when London Met was potentially considering a partnership with the London School of Business and Finance. At that point, however, there appeared to be no particular problems, at least as far as that particular UCBA visitation was concerned. Later, however, in May 2012, UCBA visited again and announced to London Met management that there were a number of problems with regard to the status of London Met students, although they were not clear as to whether they were talking about London Met present or past students, or indeed the validity and robustness of the checks on future students at London Met. That then subsequently led to various kind of interchanges or various attempts, mainly by London Met, to find out exactly what UCBA required to satisfy their concerns. As I understand it directly from London Met management, they got very, very little back from UCBA before the actual suspension in July. At that point, again, there was considerable confusion on the part of UCBA, or seemed to be from our point of view, our point of view being on this occasion both management and unions, because I don't think there was any difference between our sort of viewpoint, as to exactly what UCBA required to satisfy their concerns. Because there's that degree of uncertainty about what UCBA required to satisfy their concerns, and because we believe that we supplied all possible evidence indicating the not merely that our systems in terms of registering students, attesting and validating their qualifications, and their attendance subsequently at the university. And we were clear that all of those were perfect, and there was no problem. They're obviously not perfect, but they were pretty good, and they were certainly better than many other universities. And because, despite us giving all of that evidence, it was still unclear what exactly UCBA required to satisfy their concerns. We can only conclude, and I think this was probably the conclusion of management, but it was certainly the conclusion of the union, that there was more to it and more at stake than simply a concern about the validity of London Met's administrative systems. We therefore believe that there was a political dimension behind the UCBA visits to London Met, and that these were basically inspired from the Home Office. There may have been a right-wing agenda which simply does not like the widening diversity agenda of London Met. It may be an agenda that was even more personal, which we couldn't affect, which was the lead-up to a reshuffle within the Condem government, and the positioning of various people, including Theresa May and David Willetts, who were the two key actors at government level in terms of the dramas around higher education and immigration status, and the inclusion at all of students within the Home Office's figures relating to immigration. I mean, I should say at this point that UCU's clear position on this is that higher education overseas students in this country are basically paying guests, should be treated as paying guests, and should not be subject to the type of investigation and demonisation that has been the case from the Home Office and from UCBA in respect to the London Met students. Right, well I hope to see the future of foreign students back at London Met, and I hope to see the figures for foreign students at a national level back to what they were before the UCBA debacle over London Met. I'm well aware that David Cameron has visited India. Indeed, many ministers of the condemned government have visited India. One of the reasons that they've been to India is because of two articles that appeared in the Indian press, both highly supportive of London Met directly and expressly. One was in the Hindu and the other was in the Indian Times. In both instances, they were very clear-sighted judgments and analyses and critiques of the Home Office, of UCBA's actions, and of all the political machinations that I previously described. It was amazing how the Indian newspapers were able to understand the story clearly in a way that the Daily Mail, Sun, London Evening Standard and many other tabloid journals were completely unable to understand it. No, I don't think it has anything to do with the figure. Actually, it was a 5.9 million fine for over-recruitment. It may have had something to do with the previous history of London Met with the Higher Education Funding Council, which goes back to the fine which HEFSI originally imposed against London Met, which was of the order of about 34 million. Which we are still in the process of repaying. In fact, as I understand it, HEFSI have suspended the requirement to repay during the current financial crisis at London Met, or whatever crisis we've got at London Met, occasioned by the UCBA issue this year. But the main reason that London Met has been highlighted is precisely because London Met was one of the biggest universities in the country, had the highest density of ethnic minority groups in the country, had one of the highest constituencies of overseas students in the country, has a commitment to social justice, has a diversity of course range, particularly in the area of humanities, including Caribbean studies and those type of such as black history. And therefore it was an obvious target for those who do not see culture as being quite that diverse and have a more monochrome vision of culture. As far as I know, the $2 million fund may not even have been paid, but it was totally useless. It was given to the task force for the purpose of exiting, only for the purpose of exiting London Met students to somewhere else, migrating them out to some other university. In fact, very few students were migrated out to anywhere by way of the task force, which has, in my view, has been totally and utterly useless. And I think if you asked London Met management, who tried to cooperate with the task force, they would almost were in part of that, because they felt it was better to be in than outside it, which I do understand. They would share exactly the same view for third-year students starting in September 2013. So in fact, the answer to your question is most of the students are probably still here. Some may have given up, of course, because of the hostility that they encountered as a result of UCBA's actions.
Of course. Just moving on to...
is that many of these colleges are essentially parasitic upon the system.
Do you not think the UK Border Agency should be targeting their focus more?
I think if the UK Border Agency took their focus away from London Met and focused elsewhere according to its own particular remit, then that would be great for London Met. On the other hand, as I say, I don't think students should be the concern of the Home Office or UCBA.
Despite what's happened, do you still feel that